Welcome, everyone, to the Songwriters on Process podcast. My name is Benno Papari, and on this podcast, I take a deep dive into the writing process behind some of the world's best songwriters. By way of background, I am a former English professor. I have a PhD in English language and literature, and I'm a writer myself. So this is a conversation about writing between two writers. My goal has always been to treat songwriters the same way that we treat prose writers, just as writers, plain and simple. So that's all we focus on. I don't care about tour stories, favorite bands, how bands get their name, favorite foods, anything like that. This is, again, a deep dive into the songwriting process with some of the world's best songwriters. And with that, let's get into today's episode. And today on the pod, it is Alex Cameron. His latest album is called Late to Set. And I have to say, I absolutely loved this conversation. It's really one of my favorites I've had in a long time. First of all, because I learned a lot. He taught me some great things here. Cameron's also endlessly entertaining and hilarious. So we had a lot of fun. A few things I want to point out, though, because I love hearing about the process. A new process, something I've never heard. And what he does is he has blank butcher paper at his table, and it's spread out over the table. And that's where he writes everything. Text message drafts, song lyrics, journals, lists, everything. Everything goes there on the butcher paper, so it's always visible. At some point, he told me that he doesn't like closing a book on words, even his laptop, so he always wants to be seeing the words. So the butcher paper is always there. He sits there, he walks by it, and when that paper fills up, he pulls another one out, blank piece of butcher paper. He saves the old one, but that way he's always got the words in front of him. I love that. He also taught me about ruminatio, or quite literally, that's an Italian word for the translation is chewing the cud. And as you can tell, ruminatio has a lot in common with rumination. So we talked about that within the context of good lesson of cow digestion. And one more thing reminds me, he said, enjoying the process too much doesn't always serve the artwork. You have to hate it and at the same time suffer through it. And it reminds me of that Martin Amis quote where he says, a writer's life is half ambition and half anxiety, and there has to be both. It is no good writing a novel feeling fine, and it is no good writing a whole novel feeling miserable. So again, latest album by Alex Cameron is called Late to the Set. Here's my interview with Alex Cameron. I always start with a very simple question. That is, do you think it's important to create in some fashion every day? Or do you think that forcing the issue can make things derivative or just make things stale?
I think writing without purpose every day is important.
Writing without purpose.
Yeah.
Nice.
I scratch a lot of my writing itch by texting, and it's a bit of a worry for me, a concern for me at the moment. I'm like, all my good stuff is coming out in texts. And I've tried to develop a system with my dear friend Maxim Ludwig, where we have a code of different you know how you can respond to a text with a symbol?
Yeah.
So we've got a series of symbols, which is one is like, you should write that down. Another is you have to stop what you're doing because what you just text me sounds like the beginning of a poem, and you have to write. You have to, no matter what you're doing in your day, you have to take 5 minutes to just flesh it out a bit. And then one is like that sounds like it belongs in our manifesto. You know, so 3 different sort of symbol systems. So that the idea is, if I search through my text for a symbol, all of those symbols should turn up. And then I should be able to actually go back over the texts and be like, what did I text that day? You know, because I get so much of I spend so much time texting, and it's so much fun. And I'm like, that's what writing is too. Writing is just having fun with your thoughts. So I don't know. I might have to stop texting people. So, you know, vivaciously.
So I just want to get this straight. So when you start to text, is there a moment where you say, "This is going to be a long one," and so you recognize that this is something could be greater that belongs somewhere else, not just the phone. I guess it sounds like you deliberately use that as part of your process then.
Yes, yes. Texting is a massive, massive part of my process. Massive. Like, in fact, I spend a good many hours a day texting with someone or something or people, and it's the most fun I can have writing. It's the most fun I can have writing is sending texts. I cackle. I sit on my couch and I'm texting. I'm fully addicted to texting. And social media, not so much. But texting, I am 100% like furiously addicted to it. I'm getting happy right now talking about texting. I love it. And I cackle and I just feel so connected to the universe because I'm texting with people and it's funny or it's angry. You get in an argument via text. Now that is pure entertainment.
I'm thinking but the key is the other party needs to also love to text because I could see people being like, "He's got to stop. I've got
Yep.
stuff to do." Right. So
Yep. Yep.
these are willing parties in this, right?
Absolutely. Yes. No, it's not a matter of you go fishing for it sometimes, send a funny picture, send a poem, picture of myself or a picture of a poem or something, with a special someone, not with everyone. It's not like I'm going through my phone book. There's probably only 2 or 3 people that I actually text this much with. But sure, absolutely, you don't want to be pestering someone. I'm not a pest. I'm responding to the charm of the conversation. I'm not fucking trying to ignite it.
So this sounds like this is takes the place of journal writing then, right? I mean, these are pretty.
Yeah.
Do you journal write or is that not at all?
Um, I I've developed a system, and it's a combination of something that I'd like to think I developed and something that I've learned from other people and stories about other writers. But I cover my desk with with these big sheets of butcher's paper, and instead of having a journal, I have it all out on the table. So the table is just words, uh, sentences. Sometimes if I'm having a conversation with someone, I'm writing down some things that are being said. There's notes from other people who have come to my place. They see it and they start writing on it. And I don't, and it just, there's something really, I don't know if there's anything that if there's any, it's just a habit of mine. I started to really not enjoy closing books on words. So if I write in a journal and I close the book, I don't know what it is. And I'm obviously a sensitive, very special boy. I don't claim any other characteristic, but I do claim to be special and sensitive. Um, if I close a book on words, even closing my laptop after typing, I feel awful. I feel really bad. I don't know why. I don't like carrying diaries and journals. They seem to stare at me and like, why aren't you writing in me? But when I have these big sheets of paper, the words never die. They don't go anywhere. They sit in your house like a plant, and you can go over to them and go, oh, yeah, that's funny. And then you walk away and think you vacuum, you come back and you go, oh, yeah, and you write another one down. It's so much fun. It's like sort of like that.
Amazing. So I have a lot of questions. And before my question though, I read about this and I think it was Louis Menand in the New Yorker. So what he does is because here's why I love what you're doing is that if we stare at something, the eureka moments never happen, right? If we just sit and stare, the eureka moments happen when we're not thinking about them. So what
That's
he
right.
does is he has all of these, he lives in a house and he has all of these note cards on a table in the foyer. And he walks by that table 100 times a day, right? And every time he walks by, he looks at the note cards. 99% of the time, nothing happens. It's that 1% where
Yeah.
something clicks. I love it. That's exactly what you're doing. He does the same thing, only they're on note cards. But I
Right.
think it's right. It's you're probably walking by that. You may not be sitting down staring at it, but you're walking by it
Yeah.
throughout the day, right?
Exactly. And there's a big stack of them, so I can like at any moment flick through and just look at, oh yeah, that's like, I try to do them, once every fortnight I flip them out, but I don't really know. I honestly don't know where it's leading. It's what I've been doing, and it makes me feel so nice to just have the words out. And I have no interest in writing something that no one should be able to read. So I don't like journaling, because I'm like, I'm sorry, but what's the fucking point? If no one can read this, I'm sorry, who am I fucking talking to? I get it as a process and as a mental health or a life narrative exercise, but I have no interest in being like, I wouldn't even be angry if someone read my journal. If they were like, I read this, I'd be like, poor you. That's a bad read. Like, I'm so sorry that you had to do that. That's a shocking read. It's not going to be fun for anybody. It's actually like a total fucking disaster in there. So I would rather write and be like, fuck it. I could write the most personal thing and put it on my wall. And if people came around for dinner, I would still be like, yeah, that's that thing I wrote. I don't care. In fact, why put anything else into words except the things I wouldn't want people to know?
So where did you learn where did you learn the butcher paper idea?
It came from uh friends in the music business. Every now and then I would hear about some freak, like savant coming in and just, like not needing to be precious about the medium, not needing their type of pen, not needing their type of paper, the paper, like just being like, oh shit, I've got an idea. And then sometimes it's a big like texture, and they're just like drawing it with two hands on the wall. It's like, I don't know. It's like you should live in it. Like when you go to Madrid and you see like Goya's black paintings, and the story goes he painted them on the walls of his house, and they had to like, it's like you just do it, and it doesn't actually matter what it is or where it goes. But it does matter that someone should be able to read it at some point. I don't want to write anything that no one should be able to read. So have it out in the open, and see what happens. I don't know.
So are you, when it comes to the writing process, then, because I noticed none of those papers they're all unlined,
Yeah.
and I had
I
a
hate
couple
time.
years. Yeah, I had a couple years ago, I had on Daniel Lanois, the producer, and he
Yeah.
said,
Wow.
again, what you did,
Amazing.
he does everything on 11 by 22 unlined art paper. And there
There you
are
go.
arrows, and there's words here, words here, words here. There's squiggles, there's crossouts, there's doodles. And
Yeah.
and I'm the same way. My process is very nonlinear, because, when I was a professor, I tell my students, the outlining thing we're always taught in school, the 1 AB, 2 AB, that no one thinks like that. And
No one thinks like that.
we're not linear thinkers, and I've always said that if you have a linear process, you're not mirroring how you think. And so I think that you need chaos with structure.
Yes. Well, that's actually super pertinent for me, because I'm currently sort of grappling with like, my whole career I've been grappling with this idea of like of the concept of an idea versus the concept of execution, and where is the line? Because sometimes in my life I've been like, ideas are completely and utterly worthless. If there's no execution, the idea should occur to you during the execution of the hope of an idea, because it's kind of even in the word, it's sort of idealized. It's so like, that was my idea. You hear people say that, and it's like, yeah, but you didn't fucking do it. It's not actually my idea. It's an idea that can occur to a person. And now
Yeah.
I'm going to execute it in my way. Like, I think it's such bullshit when I hear of people being hard done by because something was their idea. I'm like, it's not actually. That's the most arrogant position to have. It's your execution. And if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it. And if you don't do it better than them, then, I'm so, but like fucking, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be an injustice there to me. Um, Obviously, I would sue anyone if they breached my own standards.
Right.
So
There are limits to
I
that
would see
idea, right?
them in court, but theoretically, This is how I feel about it.
So when you, I guess back to my question, when it comes to the lyric writing,
Mm.
uh, are you a linear writer or more chaos, non-linear?
It's 100% complete chaos, and when I try to order it, it feels like pain and suffering. I'm working through that or trying to. Um, yeah, it's like a lot of it's like sort of it's erotic. There's a lot of flirtation, not a lot of penetration, you know?
That's
If
the pull quote for the pod. That's the pull quote on the podcast, by the way.
shit, it might be the story of my life.
Um, is it better to write? So let's say you start to write a song, it's not happening, you're not feeling it. Is it better to finish through and write a bad song or write no song?
Well, better is finish what you started. Personally, what I've found to be true is I have, like, songs that are corpses under the mattress, and I just if someone would even go near it, they would start to smell a bad vibe. So I I I try and hide from my previous works. I really don't like them. Not in terms of, like, I'm being critical of myself. They just feel like anchors to the past in a way that, like, they feel, when, like, if you have a friend or an acquaintance or anyone really that sort of for whatever reason wants to have a conversation that makes you turn and reflect on what could potentially have been a difficult time, and you're like, I don't want to have this conversation. I don't want to think about that time. I'm sorry, like, I've kind of done all my thinking about that time, and I don't actually have a way forward if I keep looking backwards at it. And that's sort of how I feel about my previous records. It's different when I get on stage and I start singing the songs because I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember this. And it's as nice to share. But by myself, I don't really want to listen to them. And that's a new thing for me because I used to be like very happy to listen over my music. But it occurred to me that enjoying the process too much maybe doesn't serve the artwork. You kind of have to hate it at the same time. You can't always just be high and loving the process, and sometimes you have to suffer through it. And whether you do your suffering leading up to the writing, and the writing is a vent, or you start writing and you do your suffering during the writing, and that's how you get it done. Or it's all a breeze and you do your suffering afterwards, like because you feel like you got visited by the black monk and you're a delusional asshole. You shouldn't have been so arrogant.
So if you're writing something and you're feeling good, you feel like you got a vibe going, does that make you kind of nervous? I mean, are you thinking like, why is this so easy? Why is there no suffering involved?
No way, no way. If it's feeling good and it's flowing, you got to ride that wave, and then you can deal with the regrets later. You maybe make some bad decisions because you feel good about yourself. You can't. I've seen people go like, I go through periods of being like questioning everything and questioning, why am I hearing this? Why do I want to say this? It doesn't serve any purpose. It's a useless question to ask yourself. I'm just observing my experiences. I don't have a position on it except that if it's feeling good when you're being creative, do it, because that's a fucking rare mineral.
But I guess back to what I was just to follow up. The are if you're do you finish the even the songs that don't get released? Are there songs that you have no intention of releasing, but like I had Ben Gibbard on about a month ago, and he said he called himself a serial completionist. He said he finishes every song he starts, no matter how bad it is, and even if no one will ever see it, he has to finish it.
Wow, I like that. I like that. No, I'm not a serial finisher. No, and I think um yeah, according to my experience, if I reflect on it, if it doesn't pull me along, then I don't do it.
Okay. Do you go back to those? Or if you're not feeling it, you set it aside. You won't come back to it even like weeks, months later. Really?
Never. It's got to pull me along, and then I've got to let go of it at some point. I can't be like, oh, remember that song we half finished? Let's see what that is. Nope. No, no, no.
Really?
Never, 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 never.
The songs that you write, those lightning in a bottle songs that happen in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Do you trust those, or again, do those make you nervous as to like, there's a I need to be skeptical. This was too easy. Because I think writers go both ways, and not just songwriters. Writers go both ways on those ideas too.
Yeah. Yeah. I trust it completely. The faster it happens, the more I'm like, oh, cool. I have nothing to do with it. I didn't even get to involve myself. You know, I like, I anything that happened creatively that I was more of a conduit for than a like skilled technician on that feels the best. I don't really like the idea of being responsible for the work because I don't like the idea of responsibility generally. But again, I will take anyone to court if they claim that my perspective on creative spirit is at odds with my business practice. It's actually what makes me laugh about this whole like artists are just an aerial, man. You've got to stay open to the frequencies. And I'm like, okay, but I do see your name on a lot of credits, and I think you sued someone in the past for something done. So
Right.
let's not fucking get too on our high horse here. Yes, you do receive transmissions for whatever reason, depending on what you think of neuroscience and all that kind of spiritual physics and whatever. You have your own position. You know what it feels like to be alive in your soul. But I do think it's funny to just like basically sell en masse the idea that like you just got to quiet your mind and the genius comes. It's like, that's your life, motherfucker. Some people actually have to sit down and learn the piano until they're 12 years old every day, until they've got arthritis. That's how they got their genius.
Well,
It's just there's different approaches.
yeah. I mean, I've interviewed songwriters who've been around for 50 years. Those people say you got to sit down and put the work in. No, I mean, the people who've been around the longest, they're not the ones that say, oh, yeah, I just sit there and wait for it to happen. Like,
Yeah.
none of them say that. None of them do.
There might be a bit of both, There might be a bit of both in terms of like, you live your life and cyclically ideas come and go. And I started thinking that like last year, I started thinking that a like good art doesn't make a life. A good life makes art.
Hmm.
And so like you got to tend to your own individual needs of how you like to exist in order to be, I think, satisfied by your own creativity, which raises a number of different subjects, and topics like how do you achieve that, and how do we make that a common human practice? I do still think that artists are kind of like, in the last 10, 15 years have kind of been seen as like selfish individuals who require a certain standard of privilege in order to operate, and creativity in itself, because of the way that the market works and the way that you know capitalism works, it actually has become expensive to live your life and be a creative person. You don't make much money. Even you get a bit of a notoriety and you can sustain yourself and pay your rent, you're still not making money. So being an artist and a writer ends up being like, fuck, people are going to hate me. I mean, people in your mind, you get this sort of feeling that society doesn't value the artist as much as it potentially could, as it sort of values the athlete, or as it values the ad man, or as it values the, whatever. These other kind of like sort of parallel forms of creativity. But I think that when I start answering some of your questions, I just start talking about something else completely. And then I start, I don't even know where I am. I'm like, shit, I just wandered around this strange town. And I don't know
Well, let
where
me bring you back. So those songs that are lightning in a bottle songs, the songs that you can write in 15 minutes, do you revise those lyrics, or do you think there's a reason why this happened? Are you less likely to revise the lyrics that come the fastest?
Yeah, I don't revise the lyrics that come the
Oh,
fastest.
really?
I don't
Okay.
revise them at all. Even if they're not really making sense, I don't. Um, I I just have been really trying to like, because you get into the business side of it, and you start working with other artists, collaborating, you learn a lot about the way that people are creative. I think the biggest mission becomes like, how do I get my head out of this completely? I think mastery is sort of like being, or the aspiration of what mastery could potentially be, is that like you want to sort of become mist. You want to become so uh you know um relaxed into your ability that you can actually get out of the way of the art form that you're trying to be expressive through, you know. So you don't want to actually be there, preferably, but that takes I think a long time, or you get freaking lucky and it happens once or twice in a lifetime. I don't know, it could happen all the time. But I think the idea is to be not involved intellectually in the decision making. Does that make sense? What are people going to think about that? These are questions that are sort of dictated by, will I make a living off this?
Hmm.
Not, is this right or wrong? There is no right or wrong. There is, sorry, but some of the most brilliant poetry or lyricism just has nothing to do with sense at all, and that's why it's gorgeous. So though I do tend to write about things and make sense of things through my songs, I'm not that kind of writer myself. I just think there can't be a set rule on, I need to go back and edit these lyrics.
Are there certain things you do to set yourself up for success? In other words, like I love reading about the rituals of writers, whether it's like a certain room, certain chair, time of day.
Yeah.
How important are those things to you? That environment that you're in when you write.
Um, Not so important. What tends to be more important for me is is around it. As we were talking about before, like sometimes doing the dishes is the best thing you could do for that day for writing. Um, Conversation is really where I get to lose myself. So if I like talking to people a lot. I like going and meeting with someone, having a meal, and just chatting. If it's the right kind of person. There's not that many people on earth that I would like to do that with, but when I do like to do it with someone, it's like it's beautiful. Um, and I'm like, equally, I need my time alone, so it ends up being, my photosynthesis comes from other people, so I end up being a bit um not intentional with it, but I do end up like spending a lot of time with someone, feeling supercharged, getting photosynthesized, and then needing to be by myself so that I can sort of process that energy and what happened to me. Um, Environment is not so important. I For almost a year now, I've only really been able to write titles and first lines. I haven't really looked underneath what those are. So sort of like ideas and concepts, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if they're all making one big thing, or if it's just a series of swings and no dings.
Back to the butcher block though, paper. Are you writing lyrics like are you writing not on the paper, but do you think it would be effective if you're writing your lyrics in a notebook and you've got that butcher paper right underneath it? Like, do you write those lyrics with that paper there?
Yeah, yeah. Everything is on this. I drafted up an angry text the other day on here. I have like it's so funny. It's I crossed out a lot of it. One of the sentences is, this is absurd. One of the sentences is, this is a text that I drafted and did not send to someone because I'm not that kind of person. As I said, I'm not problematic in any way. But one of the sentences that I did not send is, I don't feel a great need to show up and pretend that we are really good friends anymore.
Hmm. So that might make it into a song. Does that sound like a lyric,
It
possibly?
could. It
Yeah.
could. It could.
So
And then
does
there's like weird synopsis, and some of them are just notes from a meeting. It's quite interesting to be able to like flick through them like you're sort of looking at a calendar.
yeah.
It's nice because um I don't know, I like I said, I just don't like closing down things on words. It feels bad.
Are you a does time of day matter? I read somewhere that it's genetic whether we're night people or morning people. Does that matter? Are you productive at a certain time of day?
When I'm not on antidepressants, I am a complete vampire. It's like almost I'm a possum. Um, uh, when I'm on the antidepressants, sort of, uh, I guess I don't actually have rhyme or reason for it. But I have gone through. I think for longer in my life, I've been nocturnal, and then every now and then I get a glimpse of what it would mean to be a morning person, and I love it. But I don't know if it. I don't know. I'm yet to decide which is more productive. I don't know. I've had a bit of both. Some of the best things I've written have been at 4 a.m. After sleeping, or trying to, and then others. I used to get this thing in bed. I would lay there trying to go to sleep, and I would get so excited about the potential for life and for what it would mean to be creative, and my imagination I would start like fully projecting these wonderful, glorious scenarios of just hope and like, and then I would get so happy and excited that I wouldn't be able to sleep. It was like, you know, um, and I used to, you know, what the fucked up thing is, I used to complain about it and be like, why can't I just sleep? And now I'm like, you should be so lucky. You should be so lucky.
So do you write that stuff down?
No, that stuff I'm like just sitting there going, I'm just like basically it just sitting there in ecstasy. But you know, it's like the old um the Mitch Hedberg joke where he's like he has an idea, but he's in bed and the pen and paper on the other side of the room. So he likes the idea, but then he has to convince himself why it's not a good idea and why he shouldn't write it down because he doesn't want to get up to do it.
I love a good Mitch Hedberg quote.
Yeah.
That's great. By the way, I have a quote up here from Agatha Christie that I always give songwriters. It's literally what you said. And she said, and I want to ask you about this. The best time to write a book is when you're doing the dishes.
Okay.
So, okay, so here's why. So, the idea that our eureka moments happen when our brains are engaged in unconscious activities, as we've been talking about. They don't happen when you sit down and say, I'm going to have an idea. They happen when we are engaged in monotonous activities. So, I've heard things like doing the dishes, folding laundry, vacuuming, mowing the lawn, gardening. There was an article in the Washington Post a couple years ago, why we get our best ideas in the shower. Same, or driving, right? David Byrne, a car is a good place to write lyrics. Driving occupies one part of the brain, freeing up the other. So, uh,
Wow.
yeah. So how often I mean, when you said doing the dishes, I was like, holy shit, that's spot on.
Right.
So does that happen a lot to you? You know, do you get those ideas when you're not trying to get those ideas?
Yes. This is awesome because I was yesterday trying last night, I was sitting here and I was thinking, what is the ideal way for me to be able to do other things and write at the same time. So I was looking into all these different options, like getting some robotic glasses that have a microphone, and I can just be like, start talking, and it records everything that I say, and then I can just be doing other things. But then that starts to get into like now I'm looking at having like a robot assistant, and I don't know if that's really actually healthy. Maybe for like, you know, I don't think creativity is a numbers game. I just don't. And I don't think that it is completely down to discipline. I think there's a lot of that. But you find discipline, you don't generate it.
Hmm.
You find it through a series of events that lead you to feel capable of being disciplined in one thing or whatever. Um, I don't like willpower. I don't know if I even believe in it. I don't think willpower has gotten a lot done for me. I think like uh momentum has more than willpower. Um but yeah, I sometimes record voice memos when I'm driving. Like I'll have an idea and I'm like, "Oh, that's decent." And I'll start recording it. And then but the problem is the reason why I like that quote you just read, the Agatha Christie one, and why I think my impulses to get some sort of automated recording system are actually deep. I think those ideas of mine are deeply flawed because you have to ruminate. And I learned this last year. I went to a church service, and the sermon was about rumination and how it was based on this Italian word ruminatio or whatever. Have you heard about this?
No.
And to like the metaphor or the image conjured is the way that a cow digests something, grass, is through a series of stomachs, multiple stomachs, and it goes into the first stomach, and the cow digests the grass, gets a lot of vitamins out of it, and then pumps it into the second stomach, where there's another digestive process that extracts more vitamins, and then it goes to the third one, and there's another, it extracts more vitamins, and then something really strange happens. It pushes it back up into the first stomach, and it goes through it again. And the way that they like speak about what creative or spiritual awakenings is that you have to allow, unfortunately or fortunately, for your subconscious to work through it as well as your consciousness.
Mhm.
So if all I'm doing is recording my ideas, I'm not actually letting them sit with me, and I'm like actually forcing them out. And what happens, I think, is for me is like a little bit of creative burnout, because I'm like, I don't think quantity is really doing it here. I like to write because I like life, not because I like writing.
Hmm.
Um, and I I think that in that quote, doing the dishes is the best way to write a book, is because I think if you're meant to write it, it won't go away.
Hmm. Yeah.
I believe in catching ideas and following threads and investigating mysteries, all those things. But I just don't think that you forget what you're supposed to write.
When I was, I've always told people that if you think your writing process is only taking place when pen hits paper, you'll never succeed. But I would
Right.
tell my students, your writing process is taking place while you are sleeping, eating, working out. Exactly what you're saying is that
Yeah.
you've got to believe that even if that thing is not in the front of mind, in the back, it's working its way through. I don't know that
Yes.
it is, but at some point, it'll announce itself to me. I agree with you 100%, but you got to think that way as a writer.
You have to, otherwise, what? They say like, if you do what you love, you won't work a day in your life, or whatever the quote is. And I'm like, yeah, no, but if you do what you love, every moment you're not doing it is agonizing. So you don't actually get to you stay in the front of your mind. Why aren't I doing it? Why aren't I doing it? Why aren't I doing it? And then that sort of forms this strange membrane around what you could be doing, which is living your life and reporting back what you find.
And then I think if you think the way that you're saying, that faulty thinking, that's what leads to writer's block. Ironically, I think.
Yeah, because then you start like, you know, you start essentially forming an argument against yourself.
Hmm.
And I guess in some strange way, what I do is I'll find myself essentially trying to criticize my existence as a defense against someone else being able to. Not like if I get out in front and understand all that's wrong with me, no one will ever be able to tell me something I don't know about myself.
Yeah.
Which is I need to be comfortable with people observing me and having their opinions of me, and I need to actually not give a fuck. But I really this kind of conversation to me is just magnificent. I love it. I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. I adore it. I adore it because skill and experience and time are all the time management certainly are all so important, but like I I've only ever sort of used my creative inclination as a way to essentially get around the world, you know.
Yeah.
That's the first 20 years of my adult life have been just like, okay, I've made this thing. How do I get this thing to take me to Paris? Okay, I made this thing and now I'm in Paris. I'm going to make something else while I'm in Paris because I think it would be cool if I could get to London somehow, you know? And then you do all these things all around the world and then it's hard. I don't know if I could fully say that my life is in the place where I have idealized it, but I was talking to my friend the other day about how strange our lives are, all people's lives, not particularly anyone in particular. But like still I think every human would be very impressive to our 15-year-old selves.
That's true.
Like 15-year-old you would be like, fucking hell.
Very true.
You know?
There's a great we talk about writer's block, and before we talk about writers, there's a great story about Joseph Conrad, the writer, and he
Mm.
said he wrote like a 12-page letter to his cousins complaining about writer's block, missing the irony that he just wrote a 12-page letter.
Yeah, exactly.
But so much what we're talking about, that's what I was thinking about, because it's he was so focused on only one thing, not realizing I just wrote 12 pages.
Yeah.
But to him didn't matter because it wasn't that thing. But I think he was so like, I wonder if at some point it's like insomnia, right? You start thinking about why you can't get to sleep. Writer's block, you start thinking about why you can't write, and then you're fucked because
Yeah.
you'll never write anything, which is why taking a step back, and doing all those things that require no conscious thought. The trick is, if you say to yourself, I'm going to go wash the dishes and I'll get an idea,
Yeah, no.
it's never going to happen.
That's like when you're trying to fall asleep and you're going, I wonder what it feels like to fall asleep. And then you
Right.
start thinking about the process of falling asleep and knew exactly what you said before is right. And
Yeah.
there's also I learned this thing at the beginning of this year from a wonderful person who is very wise and practices a lot of meditation and talking about like the idea of a second arrow that we stab ourselves with. Have you heard about this?
Hmm.
I guess it's I don't want to get it totally wrong, but I think it's some sort of Buddhist philosophy about like an event happens that causes us to respond emotionally, whether it's painful, whatever it is. But we paint it as negative because it doesn't feel great. For example, an arrow hitting you and it stabbing you. But then instead of focusing on letting the situation occur, which is you've been hit with an arrow, we get out a second arrow and stab ourselves and say, how fucking stupid are you for getting hit by an arrow? And it's that second arrow that kind of actually stops you from addressing the first arrow, which wasn't even your fault. It came out of the bushes. You're just walking along, you know? And so the idea of, like, for me, the idea of writing has become far less about what I do, say, think, or have achieved, and sort of much more about, like, how do I actually cultivate love for the thing that is the only reason why I somehow managed to stay alive, which is writing, music, love, creativity, people, like this. How do I cultivate um, love for my art form as opposed to the temptations of bitterness or, complaints of the industry or the circumstances of society? It's like, I think the job is, I know too many musicians who don't listen to music, and I know too many writers who don't read. And it's like, that's such a bummer, because I would really, really hope against hope for anyone, even my most terrified rivals. I hope that you can stay in love with what you love, I hope you can stay in love with it. Because, the industry demands you present. This is something I say. This is actually something I wrote down on my butcher's paper here. The industry demands that you present as a master, but the craft demands that you attend as a student.
Hmm.
And youth is not caring about how old you are. Being a student is sort of kind of like realizing that education is actually a punishment, and you should just seek to be innocent, you know?
Yeah.
So you do away with focusing on your own skill level and why you aren't this way or that. And you try and live a life that allows you to be curious and to like be humble in the face of this huge project that we're all tied up in. I kind of start to see all of human creative output as just one big hole in the ground that we're all throwing stuff into. It all counts,
Hmm.
even the stuff I don't like. That's why we get so angry when we don't like some art that everyone else does, because we're like, that's not going in the fucking hole. That doesn't count. Not in my hole. That's not going in my hole. And everyone's like, it's our hole, and we think it should go in the hole, actually. And I'm like, fuck it. They're gonna get it in the hole. It's already in the fucking hole, Oh, now it's got an Oscar. Cool. Yeah, it's in the hole.
Great segue to the last question. And we this is not a part of the official recording before, but we talked about writers. So I'd love to continue that conversation. Is there are you a genre person? Are you a writer person? Who do you like to read? How important is that? I get a sense it's very very important to your process, but who are some of your favorite writers?
I love the first book I read as an adult that was I was really drawn to, and maybe it's because I like books that I stumble upon in a strange way more than, because I'm like a fucking huge hipster. So recommendations actually piss me off, and I think I'm better than them, and I should already know them. And I wish I could say, yes, I know them when someone's talking about it, but I don't know them, and I feel like an idiot. So I prefer to like find a book on the ground and be like, yeah. Um, um, the first book was Herzog by Saul Bellow.
Oh, really? Wow.
When I was like 18, I found it in a bookstore in Amsterdam. And I asked this old Dutch guy, I was like, you got to just recommend a book. And he was like, here's the one. And so I read it. And how fucking, how unique and special is that about me? And I just remember thinking, like, stumbling upon this idea of a meltdown, and like, it was just it was it's funny because I don't know if it then allowed me to fully understand how close to the edge I always am, which was a little bit of a dangerous lesson at 18. But I loved that book. And then I thought, oh yeah, of course I love reading. And I went and I can't believe I remember all this. I went and got, I wanted to read something a little bit different. So when I was in Sydney, I went to a bookstore called Gertrude and Alice in Bondi Beach, which I love this bookstore. It's been there for years, and I grew up in Bondi. Um, and I got a book called No Beast So Fierce by Ed Bunker, who learned to read and write in prison. And, Tarantino, I was at 18. I think I picked it out because it said like a Tarantino quote on it. And I was like, I want the opposite of an intellectual musing on neurosis, I want the opposite. So, I started reading sort of more like grittier crime stuff. And then I came across a very important figure in my life, a man named McLean Stevenson. And I met him in an office I was working as a clerk in. And he in conversation, I told him that I wish I'd gone to university and that I wasn't in the workforce and I want to go get a literature degree. And he was like, well, why don't I just give you all the books you would read at university and we can talk about them. So he ended up giving me over the course of 3 or 4 years, just a huge, by the end of the 2 or 3 year period, our whole wall was just like covered in these books. So I was reading, I read, he probably took me through, all of like, he's really cool because he's not really a snob at all. So we would be reading like, Murakami, Haruki Murakami, but then also reading Dostoevsky and Chekhov, and then he had me reading philosophers and I can remember some really distinct, in my early 20s, some really distinct moments where I sort of, reading like Bataille was really like, whoa, that's really cool. The way that he was using, like the French writers are using like quite extreme circumstances to paint a portrait of something really innocent, like young love. And then, going more contemporary and reading like Michel Houellebecq was really special. And then I got into like American Gothic stuff like Flannery O'Connor, and then I got into Harry Crews. And Harry Crews was like really, really special for me in my mid-20s to find this writer who was really going there. I was like, oh, this person is going there,
Yeah.
And I read somewhere that I read an interview and someone asked him, how do you write a novel? And he said 500 words a day. And I just sort of really liked that, and I'm still yet to fully find my discipline. But that's how I start. That's sort of the path that led me forward. And I always forget 1,000 books when I'm talking, but these are the important authors that jumped out at me. I just read a book, and I'm gatekeeping this, so you have to bleep it out, and I don't want anyone else to read it because it's my special thing that I found on the ground of my street. But it's a classic, and I just hadn't read it. But Shirley Hazard, have you ever read Shirley Hazard?
No, I've not.
That is, I don't know, some of the most beautiful writing I have ever read. Maybe it just hit me and I was ready for it, but her writing is just breathtaking.
Yeah, I've heard she's wonderful.
Yeah, breathtaking. Oh my goodness. And such a beautiful like salve for the pain that I'm in. Yeah.
So we mentioned we were talking about Tennessee Williams and Sam Shepard before we started officially. I want to return to them because you've picked two great playwrights who, now theater people, as I said, my PhD is in 20th century dramatic literature. So not from a theater perspective, that's different, right? So,
Yeah.
so from a dramatic literature perspective, and theater people will tell you plays are not meant to be read. You should never read a play because they're not meant to be read to be seen. But the great thing about Williams and Shepard, although Williams probably more so, is that Williams is known for his amazing poetic dialogue. Eugene O'Neill, for all of his wonderful plays, some of his dialogue is laughingly bad.
Right.
It's like, dude, how many times can you talk about the fog and the sea? Like, we get it already,
Yeah.
And I mean, if you read A Long Day's Journey into Night, it's like, again with the fog, we get it,
Yeah.
but Williams has written, and he has books of poetry and short stories. I mean, Williams, if you read his plays, I mean, Glass Menagerie, any of that stuff, that dialogue is chillingly beautiful, with the good plays. And same with Sam Shepard, like those long soliloquies in some of those plays,
Oh,
like we've talked about, are just, I mean, I've written about them, and they are devastatingly gorgeous. With those playwrights, at least you pick people that are great writers that you could read those plays on their own.
yes, that's really something that I'm into in writing is like I don't really like stage direction or camera sort of like
Yeah.
director's notes on a screenplay. When I'm reading them, I'm always like, sorry, don't I get to fucking figure that out? Isn't that like I shouldn't you be focusing on the words that I'm saying? And that's just me being a little petty, but I I really have been sort of st- I mean, I think along with everyone, just absolutely staggered. I find it staggering, and I find it really upsetting when writers think that what they're writing is a plot, and therefore they can completely disregard the the literary side of things. I don't care that much about the story if I don't love the words.
Hmm.
That's why, like, a really good story told by the wrong person is a shit story.
Very true.
And so,
Um,
like, and that's not because of their identity. That's because of the their choice of words or lack of choice, that they haven't made a decision. That because they're just concerned about what happens. Because storytelling isn't actually about what happens; it's how it's told. That's why it's called storytelling. It's not. They're not. It's not information you're receiving. It's a feeling that you're having.
I don't know what else to say. You've said it perfectly. I agree 100%. And that's why I think, going back to those, to Williams and any of those, if you find a playwright, because right, no, you don't go to watch a play for the plot. I mean, no one's, we were talking about Edward Albee. I have a great Edward Albee story, because you were mentioning Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, right? Are you reading that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I saw him. So when he was still alive, I went to see a reading that he gave in DC, and it was at some building in downtown DC. And about 15 minutes before the reading, I went downstairs to the basement to go to the bathroom, and then he walks in. So it's just the two of us in the bathroom, and I'm like, holy
Oh my
shit.
god!
Like, any other place, I would have been like, said hi, but I'm like, I can't say hi to the guy in the bathroom. This is very awkward. I missed my
Wow.
chance. So it's like, if we were in the hallway outside of the bathroom, I would have said hi to him. But I'm like, you can't introduce yourself to someone in the bathroom. That's just,
Right.
that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, Three Tall Women's another great Edward Albee play. I mean, his
I'll write
stuff,
it down.
um, is a Zoo Story. That's another one, um, where that dialogue is just mind blowing. Where you go,
That's why
like,
that's why I never liked studying Shakespeare in high school, because all I was being taught to do was decode the meaning and figure out what was happening.
yeah,
And I'm just like, why? It sounds good.
yeah,
It sounds really good. I like the color of the words. It sounds like music. And then you get a bunch of bored 15-year-olds to go like monotone read it out.
right,
Like, sorry,
right,
what are we doing? Take us to a production and call it a day. That's all you need to do.
yeah,
Instead, they have you sit there for an entire semester reading it with a bunch of
yeah,
people that don't want to read it,
yeah.
and then you got to try and decode what this fucking play's about. No, no chance.
All right, last question then. If you're reading a book and you're not feeling it, do you have to finish it, or can you put it aside and never pick it up again?
I if I stop reading a book because I don't like it, I have to get rid of it. I can't have it in my house.
Mm,
I can't.
that's hardcore. So not only do you not finish it, you actually dispose of it.
Yeah, I dispose of it. I give it to someone, or I put it in a give or take book box, or, you know, I don't want it around.
And that's it for the latest episode of Songwriters on Process. You can find all of the old episodes on all major streaming platforms and probably some minor ones as well. You can also find them on the Songwriters on Process website. I started the site back in 2011, so that means there are hundreds upon hundreds of interviews with some of the world's best songwriters. So take a deep dive into some of those episodes. They are all great. Of course, I'm biased. Also, shameless plug. My book, Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir by Mark Morton with Benno Papari, that is me, is out now on Hachette Books and in all major bookstores. Mark is a good friend of mine. He is the guitarist in the metal band Lamb of God. And so we collaborated on his memoir. I'm biased, but that's a damn good book. Again, it is called Desolation, a Heavy Metal Memoir. And lastly, if you want to get in touch, go to the Songwriters on Process website. You can fill out a handy contact form, and it'll get to me that way. You can also email me at ben@songwritersonprocess.com. I'm all ears. Send me your comments, your suggestions, your complaints, people you want me to interview. I get great suggestions all the time. I can't respond to all of the emails because I get a lot of them, but I do read all of them. And let me know your thoughts. If you have ideas for people you want me to interview, there's your chance. And with that, I am out. See you next time.